Ever feel like you're just kind of stuck on autopilot, going through the motions, but not really, present? Today, we're going to be diving into The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle to see if he has some answers.
Yeah.
This book is a bit of a cult classic, and for good reason.
Right.
It tackles some seriously big questions about consciousness and how to actually live a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
Now, The Power of Now is known for being pretty dense.
Right.
So think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet to the most impactful parts.
What's interesting is how Tolle starts right off the bat with a bold claim. He says the key to ending your suffering lies in understanding this one idea. You are not your mind.
Okay, that's definitely a statement that makes you stop and think. I'm already intrigued.
Right.
So if we're not our minds, then what are we?
Yeah. Tolle argues that our true selves, our being, is something far deeper and more expansive than the constant stream of thoughts running through our heads.
Right.
He uses this great analogy of a beggar sitting on a box of gold. The beggar is completely unaware of the treasure he's sitting on. Just like we often overlook the incredible richness of being because we're so caught up in our minds.
So it's like we're all walking around with this incredible potential inside of us, but our minds are blocking us from accessing it.
Exactly.
Got it.
And that's where the concept of the ego comes in.
Okay.
Tolle describes the ego as this false sense of self that's created by our minds.
Okay.
It's constantly seeking validation, comparing itself to others, and clinging to the past or worrying about the future.
Wait, so you're telling me that this voice in my head that's constantly judging, worrying, and planning isn't actually me?
That's the radical idea that Tolle is putting forward.
Wow.
He says this identification with our thoughts is actually what creates most of our suffering.
Okay.
The ego keeps us trapped in these cycles of negativity by distorting our perception of time.
That's a fascinating point. I've definitely noticed how my anxiety tends to stem from dwelling on past mistakes or worrying about what might happen in the future.
And that's exactly how the ego operates. It keeps us from fully experiencing the present moment, which is the only place where true joy and peace can be found.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all connects.
Right.
But if we're not supposed to be identified with our thoughts, how do we actually break free from the ego's grip?
Well, Tolle argues that the key is consciousness.
Okay.
That is becoming aware of our thoughts and recognizing that they are not who we are.
Okay.
It's like taking a step back and becoming the observer of our mind rather than getting swept away by every thought and emotion.
So instead of getting lost in that mental chatter, we're learning to simply notice it without judgment.
Yeah.
Is that what Tolle means by becoming present?
You're getting it. Tolle makes a pretty radical claim.
Okay.
He says most of the pain we experience in life is actually self-created.
Okay, that's a big idea.
Yeah.
So you're saying that it's not the external events that are the problem, but our internal reaction to them.
Exactly. And that resistance often stems from the ego's attachment to the past or fear of the future. When we're fully present in the now we're not dwelling on past hurts or worrying about what might happen. We're simply experiencing life as it unfolds.
But isn't it natural to think about the past and future? I mean, how can we learn from our experiences or plan for the future if we're only focused on the present moment?
That's a great question, and Tolle addresses it head on.
Okay.
He distinguishes between practical thinking, which is necessary for navigating life,
Right.
and compulsive thinking, which is the ego's domain.
So it's not about completely shutting down our thought,
Right.
but rather about becoming more aware of when our thinking is helpful and when it's actually creating unnecessary suffering.
Exactly. And to do that, Tolle introduces this fascinating concept called the pain body.
Okay, the pain body. I'm listening. Tell me more about that.
It's basically this accumulation of unresolved emotional pain from our past.
Okay.
It can be anything from childhood traumas to past heartbreaks
Okay.
to everyday stresses and disappointments that we haven't fully processed.
So it's like this invisible weight we carry around that influences how we perceive the world and react to situations.
Exactly. And the tricky thing about the pain body is that it wants to keep itself alive.
Oh.
It feeds on negativity and drama, and it will often try to hijack our thoughts and behaviors in order to get its needs met.
This is starting to make a lot of sense. I can definitely see how past hurts can influence my present-day reactions.
Yeah.
So how do we actually deal with this pain body? Do we need to go back and rehash all our past traumas?
That's where Tolle's approach gets really interesting.
Right.
He says we don't need to analyze the pain body to death
Okay.
or get lost in trying to understand its origins. The key is to simply become aware of it.
So it's about noticing when those old patterns and emotional reactions are triggered
Yeah.
rather than getting swept away by them.
Exactly. And this is where the concept of the watcher or the witness comes in.
Okay.
It's like cultivating a higher dimension of consciousness that allows us to observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment.
So instead of identifying with those painful thoughts and feelings, we're learning to simply observe them as they arise and pass away.
Precisely.
Okay.
And as we become more skilled at observing the mind, we start to create a space between ourselves and our thoughts and emotions.
Right.
We begin to realize that we are not our thoughts.
Okay.
We are the awareness that's witnessing them.
Okay, that's a profound concept, but I have to admit it's a bit hard to wrap my head around.
Sure.
How do we actually cultivate this watcher consciousness in our everyday lives?
That's a great question, and one that we'll explore more deeply in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But for now, just consider this. The next time you notice yourself getting caught up in a negative thought pattern
Yeah.
or feeling overwhelmed by emotion, try to take a step back
Okay.
and simply observe it.
Okay.
Notice the sensations in your body,
Okay.
the thoughts that are running through your mind and the emotions that are present. And just see if you can create a little bit of space between yourself and that experience.
So it's not about suppressing those thoughts or feelings,
Yeah.
but rather about becoming aware of them without judgment.
Exactly. It's about shifting from being lost in thought to becoming the observer of thought.
Right.
And that simple shift in perspective can make all the difference.
This is already blowing my mind. I can't wait to dive deeper into this in the next part.
Stay tuned. We'll explore some practical techniques for cultivating presence,
Okay.
tapping into the power of the now, and ultimately breaking free from the ego's limitations.
Awesome. Welcome back to our deep dive into the power of now.
Yeah,
Last time we explored the idea that we're not our minds
right.
and that true freedom comes from recognizing our true selves or being.
Exactly.
And we touched on how the ego, with its constant chatter and focus on past and future, keeps us trapped in these cycles of suffering.
Right.
Yeah, that pain body concept was a real eye-opener.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
So how do we actually escape this mental prison and tap into the power of the present moment?
Well, that's where Tolle gets really practical.
Okay.
He's not just about lofty ideas.
Right.
He actually gives us tools to work with.
I like that.
One of the simplest yet most powerful techniques he suggests is to focus on your breath.
You mean like just pay attention to breathing? I do that all the time without even thinking about it.
That's exactly the point. Most of the time, our breath happens unconsciously.
Right.
But by bringing conscious awareness to it, you're anchoring yourself in the... Now, each inhale and exhale is a direct experience of the present moment.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does just focusing on my breath actually change anything?
Well, think about what usually happens when you're stressed or anxious.
Okay.
Your thoughts are racing.
Mm-hmm.
You might feel tension in your body.
Right.
And you're definitely not feeling peaceful.
That's me all the time.
Right. But by consciously focusing on your breath, you're interrupting that cycle. You're shifting your attention away from the mental chatter and bringing it back to a physical sensation that's always happening right now.
So it's like hitting the reset button on my mind.
Exactly. And it's something you can do anytime, anywhere,
Okay.
feeling overwhelmed at work.
Yeah.
Take 5 deep breaths,
Ooh.
anxious about a presentation. Focus on the rhythm of your breath.
Right.
It's a portable tool for presence.
I love that. It's so simple, yet it seems like it could be incredibly powerful.
It is.
Are there any other techniques Tolle suggests?
Another one he emphasizes is paying attention to your senses.
Okay.
Really savor the taste of your food. Feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, or listen to the sounds around you with complete attention.
It sounds almost too easy,
Yeah.
but I guess it's about bringing that same kind of focused attention to everyday experiences.
Exactly.
Instead of just going through the motions, I'm actually present with them.
Exactly. You're not just eating, you're fully experiencing the flavors and textures of your meal.
Right.
You're not just walking down the street. You're noticing the details of the buildings, the trees, the faces you pass by,
It's like waking up to the world around me.
and to the richness of your own inner world as well.
Okay.
By tuning into your senses, you become more aware of your body,
Okay.
your emotions, and the subtle energy that flows through you.
So it's not just about being present in our minds, but also in our bodies.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a holistic awareness of your entire being.
Right.
Now, Tolle doesn't sugarcoat things.
Okay.
He acknowledges that staying present isn't always easy.
Right.
Life throws curveballs, challenges pop up.
Yeah.
And those old patterns we talked about have a way of resurfacing.
Well, tell me about it. I could be feeling all zen and present 1 minute, and then bam, something triggers me.
Right.
And I'm right back to my old reactive self.
Those moments, those tests, as Tolle calls them,
Okay.
are actually opportunities.
Okay.
Instead of getting lost in reaction and resistance,
Yeah.
he says, use these moments to become even more conscious.
So rather than beating myself up for falling back into old patterns,
Right.
I can use those moments to deepen my awareness.
Yes. It's about observing those thoughts,
Okay.
those feelings without judgment.
Right.
Feel the energy of the experience in your body, but remember, you're not those feelings. You're the awareness that's experiencing them.
So I'm not trying to push away the difficult emotions
All right.
or pretend they're not there.
Exactly.
I'm allowing them to be present, but I'm not letting them define me.
Precisely. It's a subtle shift, but it's incredibly powerful.
But what about those really deep-rooted patterns that feel impossible to shake?
Yeah.
That pain body stuff we were talking about before.
Yeah.
How do we actually deal with those?
Well, Tolle doesn't advocate for ignoring those patterns
Okay.
or pretending they're not there.
Right.
He says we can actually transmute the pain by bringing conscious presence to it.
Transmute the pain. Okay, now you're going to have to explain that one.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
When you try to resist or suppress a difficult emotion, it's like pushing down a beach ball in water.
What about
It takes a lot of energy, and it's going to pop up somewhere else eventually.
Okay, I can see that I've definitely tried the whole ignore it and hope it goes away approach, and it never seems to work.
Right. But with presence, you're not pushing the beach ball down.
Okay.
You're allowing it to float to the surface and be seen.
Right.
It's about acknowledging the pain, feeling it in your body,
Yeah.
and simply being with it without judgment or resistance.
I can see how that would be challenging.
Yeah.
It's almost like inviting the darkness into the light of my awareness.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And as you do that, something amazing happens.
Okay.
The pain that was once trapped in your pain body starts to dissipate.
Wow.
You reclaim the energy that was bound up in those old patterns
Okay.
and start to feel lighter, more alive.
So it's not about getting rid of the pain, but rather about changing our relationship to it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that pain is a part of life,
Right.
but it doesn't have to control us.
This is all starting to connect.
Yeah.
So we're learning to become more present, to transmute our pain, and to create a space between ourselves and our reactive patterns.
Right.
But how does this actually play out in our relationships?
Relationships. That's where things get really interesting
Okay.
because our interactions with others
Right.
are often where our deepest wounds
Oh, why?
and most ingrained patterns surface.
So true. It's like our loved ones become mirrors reflecting back to us the parts of ourselves that we haven't fully embraced or healed.
Exactly. And Tolle has some radical yet incredibly insightful advice for transforming our relationships.
Okay.
He challenges us to completely accept our partners as they are,
Okay.
without needing to judge or change them in any way.
Wait, seriously? Just accept them, flaws and all? That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is difficult because our minds are always trying to control, to fix, to make things perfect.
Right.
But Tolle argues that true intimacy can only arise when we let go of that need to change others and instead focus on cultivating our own presence and acceptance.
So instead of trying to force my partner to be who I think they should be,
Right.
I'm focusing on being fully present with who they actually are.
Exactly. And you might be surprised by what happens when you do that.
Right.
The dynamics that used to trigger conflict or resentment might start to dissolve,
Right.
and a deeper sense of connection and understanding can emerge.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
But what about relationships that are just plain unhealthy or toxic?
Yeah.
Does Tolle address that?
He does. He acknowledges that sometimes the most loving thing we can do
Okay.
is to walk away from a relationship that's no longer serving us.
Right.
But he emphasizes that this doesn't have to be a painful or dramatic experience.
So it's about letting go with grace and compassion,
Yeah.
recognizing that our paths are simply diverging.
And honoring the time we've shared.
Oh.
It's about choosing what's best for both ourselves and the other person,
Oh,
even if it means saying goodbye.
okay, that makes sense. But there's still this big question that keeps coming up for me. If we can transform our individual reality by becoming more present, what does that mean for our collective future?
Right?
Can we really change the world by changing ourselves?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
And one that we'll dive into in the next part of our exploration of the power of now.
Good.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the power of now. We've covered a lot of ground, from the ego's grip on our minds to the transformative power of presence.
Yeah.
But there's one question that keeps coming back to me.
Okay.
Can we actually change the world by changing ourselves?
It's a question that has fascinated philosophers and spiritual teachers for centuries.
Right.
And Tolle offers a perspective that's both empowering and challenging.
Okay.
He suggests that, yes, individual transformation can ripple outwards, influencing the collective consciousness and ultimately shaping the world we create.
So you're saying that my own journey toward presence and awareness could actually contribute to a more peaceful and harmonious world?
Imagine a pond.
Okay.
When you toss a pebble into the water, it creates ripples that spread outward, impacting the entire surface.
Okay.
Similarly, when you shift your state of being from ego-driven to present and conscious,
Right.
you create ripples of energy that extend beyond your immediate experience.
That's a beautiful image. But I have to admit, it's hard to believe that something as simple as being present could have that much of an impact on the world's problems.
Tully acknowledges that it's not about naive optimism or ignoring the very real challenges we face.
Right.
It's about recognizing that our collective reality is a reflection of our collective consciousness.
Okay.
If we're predominantly operating from a place of fear, scarcity, and separation, that's what will manifest in the world.
So all the conflict, violence, and environmental destruction we see around us is a manifestation of that collective disconnect from presence.
Think about it. When you're caught up in your ego's fears and anxieties, how do you interact with the world? You might be more likely to react defensively, make decisions based on scarcity or greed, or see others as separate from yourself, even as threats.
That's a pretty sobering thought. But it also makes me realize that I have a choice. I can choose to operate from a different place, a place of awareness, compassion, and connection.
And that's the power of Tolle's message.
Okay.
He's not suggesting that we become passive observers or withdraw from the world's problems.
Right.
It's about engaging with life from a place of presence, wisdom, and compassion.
So it's about taking action, but from a place of alignment with my true self, not from a place of fear or ego.
Exactly.
But what does that actually look like in practice?
It can manifest in countless ways.
Okay.
It might be speaking up against injustice, making conscious choices about how you consume and interact with the environment, or simply being kind and compassionate in your everyday interactions.
It sounds like it's about bringing that sense of presence and awareness into every aspect of my life. But if I'm just one person, can I really make a difference?
Never underestimate the power of one person's shift in consciousness.
Right.
Tolle points out that throughout history, major social and cultural transformations have been sparked by a small group of individuals who dared to see the world differently.
So it's about being a catalyst for change, even if it starts with something as small as my own personal transformation.
And Tolle emphasizes that this isn't just a nice idea.
Okay.
He believes it's an evolutionary imperative. If we want to create a future where humanity can thrive, we need to evolve beyond the ego's limited and often destructive patterns.
It sounds like we're at a crossroads. We can continue down the path of fear, separation, and conflict, or we can choose a different path, one that leads to a more conscious and interconnected future.
And Tolle offers a vision of hope. He believes that a new consciousness is emerging, a consciousness rooted in presence, interconnectedness, and compassion.
Okay.
He invites us to become part of this awakening, to contribute our own unique gifts and perspectives to the creation of a more beautiful world.
That's incredibly inspiring. It makes me realize that I'm not just a powerless observer. I have the ability to contribute to positive change, one present moment at a time.
And remember, even the smallest acts of presence can have a ripple effect. A few conscious breaths, a moment of appreciation for the beauty of nature, a kind word to a stranger.
Right.
These seemingly insignificant acts can create ripples of positive energy that can spread far beyond your immediate sphere.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the power of now, I'm left with a sense of both awe and responsibility. Awe at the vast potential of human consciousness, and a responsibility to cultivate presence in my own life and to share it with the world.
And that brings us to a final question for you to ponder. If your consciousness shapes your reality, what kind of world do you want to create? What seeds of presence, compassion, and peace can you plant in the fertile ground of the now?
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the power of now. We encourage you to continue exploring these ideas and experience the transformative power of the present moment in your own life.